My name is Maya, and for as long as I can remember, my life has been lived in the shadow of my older sister, Lena. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, I really do. But we're different. Lena is the sun. She's bright, dazzling, the kind of person everyone is naturally drawn to. She was the prom queen, the class Puette, a little more in the background, happy in my own little world. My world smells of vanilla, chocolate, and burnt sugar. I'm a baker. I own a small but locally famous pastry shop, and honestly, it's my greatest joy. I create things, beautiful things, edible things that make people happy. So when Lena got engaged, I was over the moon for her. And when she asked me to be her maid of honor, I cried. But more than that, when she asked me to bake her wedding cake, my heart just about exploded. This wasn't just any cake. This was for Lena. It was going to be my masterpiece, a four-tiered monument to our sisterhood, with handcrafted sugar flowers that I'd been practicing for months. It was my gift, my way of putting all my love for her into something tangible. Everything was perfect, a fairy tale in the making. Until he came along. Mark. Lena's fiancé. On the surface, he was Prince Charming. Tall, handsome, a smooth talker with a job in finance that sounded impressive and a family that was supposedly old money. At first, I was happy for her. He showered her with gifts, took her to fancy restaurants, and looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. But there was something off. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was in the little things. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes. The way he would cut her off mid-sentence to tell a story about himself. The way he looked at me, just for a split second, with a look that was somewhere between dismissal and disdain. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being a protective younger sister. This was Lena's happiness, and I wasn't going to ruin it with my silly suspicions. So I smiled, I played along, I helped plan the most beautiful wedding imaginable. But then the little digs started, always when Lena was just out of earshot. "Oh, Maya, still playing with flour? It's cute," he'd say with a smirk. Or, "Must be nice to have a simple little hobby for a job." I'd just clench my jaw and stir my buttercream a little faster. For Lena, I could handle it. The lies started small, so small you could almost miss them. A few weeks before the wedding, Lena called me, sounding stressed. "Maya, did you forget to book the string quartet for the cocktail hour? Mark said you were supposed to handle it." I frowned, looking at the confirmed contract on my desk. "No, Lena, I booked them last month. I sent you the confirmation email." There was a pause. "Oh. Well, Mark was so sure. He must have just gotten confused." It was weird, but I let it go. A week later, it was the bridesmaid dresses. "Maya, Mark's mother is so upset," Lena said, her voice trembling slightly. "She said you were really rude to her when you called to ask about her dress size." My blood went cold. "Lena, I haven't even called her yet. I was planning to do it tonight." Another pause. "Are you sure? Mark said he overheard you on the phone with her yesterday and that you sounded very short resident, the one who got a full scholarship to her dream university. I'm more like the moon. Q." My heart started pounding. He was lying. Deliberately. He was making me look incompetent, making me look bad in front of his family and my own. Each lie was a tiny crack in the foundation of trust between me and my sister. He was isolating her, positioning himself as the only person she could rely on. I tried to talk to her, to explain that something wasn't right, but she wouldn't hear it. "You're just stressed, Maya," she'd say, waving a dismissive hand. "Mark adores you. You're just not used to him. He's very protective of me." The final blow came just 10 days before the wedding. I was in my shop, carefully crafting a sugar peony, when Lena walked in. I knew from the look on her face that something was terribly wrong. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hands were shaking. She wouldn't look at me. "Lena, what is it? What's happened?" She finally looked up, and her expression was filled with a pain and betrayal that shattered my heart. "I can't do this, Maya," she whispered. "I can't have you in my wedding." The words didn't make sense. It was like she was speaking a foreign language. What are you talking about?" Tears started streaming down her face. Mark told me what you said. About him. About his family. My mind was racing. I hadn't said a thing. What did he say I said, Lena? She flinched, wrapping her arms around herself. He said you told our cousin Sarah that he's a gold digger. That you think he's only marrying me for Dad's money and that his family is a bunch of frauds. I stared at her, speechless. It was the most absurd, most malicious lie yet. And it was clever. It was just plausible enough, playing on my quiet nature and his supposed wealth, to sound like something a jealous sister might whisper in secret. Lena, I swear to you, I never said that. I would never say that. He is lying to you. Why would he lie, Maya? She sobbed. Why would he make something like that up? He heard it himself. He said Sarah told him you were spreading rumors. Then let's call Sarah right now. I pleaded, reaching for my phone. No. Lena backed away. I can't. I don't want to cause any more drama. I just need you to not be there. It would be too awkward. Too painful. Mark is devastated. And just like that, it was over. I was no longer the maid of honor. I was no longer making the cake. I was no longer invited to my own sister's wedding. She turned and walked out of my bakery, leaving me standing there with a half-finished sugar flour in my hand and a gaping hole in my chest. The world just went grey. For 2 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I didn't answer my phone. I just sat in the dark, replaying that conversation over and over, the feeling of betrayal churning in my stomach. He had won. He had successfully cut me out of my sister's life, and she had let him. But on the 3rd day, something shifted. The deep, aching sadness started to curdle, hardening into a cold, sharp-edged anger. Why? Why would he go to such extreme lengths to get rid of me? It wasn't just about him not liking me. This was calculated. This was strategic. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't about me at all. It was about him. He was hiding something, and he was terrified that I, the quiet observer, the one who wasn't blinded by his charm, would be the one to figure it out. Well, if he wanted me out of the picture, he had just made a very big mistake. He had given me nothing but time. And he had underestimated me. He just saw a simple baker. He had no idea how resourceful I could be. He thought he had silenced me, but he had just given me a reason to start digging. I fired up my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating my determined face. My bakery wasn't just a bakery, it was a business. I'd built my website from scratch, taught myself social media marketing, and learned how to navigate the deepest corners of the internet to find the best, most obscure suppliers for rare ingredients. I knew how to find things. And I was going to find out everything there was to know about Mark. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I started with the basics. His social media was pristine, almost too perfect. Photos of him on yachts, at charity galas, wearing expensive watches. It was a carefully curated fantasy. But I've learned that the truth isn't in the posts, it's in the tags. I started going through photos he was tagged in, not just by his friends, but by friends of friends. I fell down a rabbit hole of event photos, guest lists, and old college albums. An hour turned into 3, then 5. My apartment was littered with empty coffee mugs. And then I found it. A group photo from a university event 5 years ago. Mark was in the back, smiling that same empty smile. But the caption was what made my breath catch. Congrats to the whole team at Carter Holdings on the merger. Sad to see the old company go, but excited for the future. Carter Holdings. I thought Mark's family company was called Vanguard Investments. I started digging into Carter Holdings. It didn't take long to find the public records. The company had been bought out 5 years ago after teetering on the edge of bankruptcy for nearly a decade. They had been drowning in debt. Mark's old money family was a sham. They were broke. Utterly, completely broke. The fancy cars were leased, the country club membership was on a trial pass, and the house they lived in was mortgaged to the hilt with foreclosure notices piling up. My heart was pounding, a sick mix of horror and vindication. He wasn't marrying Lena for love. He was marrying her for a lifeline. My father owned a successful, and very profitable, construction company. Lena was his only heir besides me. Mark wasn't just marrying into a family, he was planning a corporate takeover from the inside. I wasn't going to be the sad, rejected little sister crying in her bakery. No. I was going to be the architect of their downfall. And I was going to do it so flawlessly, so precisely, that when the dust settled, the only person left standing would be me, holding the truth. I began to plan, not with anger, but with the calm, methodical precision of a pastry chef piping the most intricate details. Every step had to be perfect. The timing had to be exquisite. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rescuing my sister. And I would burn her fairytale to the ground to save her from the monster in it. The morning of the wedding was the strangest day of my life. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and my sister was getting married without me. My phone was a constant buzz of texts from well-meaning relatives. Thinking of you today. So unfair what happened. We all miss you. I replied to each one with a simple heart emoji, my own heart a steady, rhythmic drum in my chest. I wasn't sad. I was a soldier waiting for the signal. I took a deep breath. I attached the dossier to a blank email. I sent it to 3 people simultaneously, my father, my mother, and our family's longtime lawyer, who was also a guest at the wedding. The subject line was simple, to be opened immediately. Regarding the wedding. I leaned back in my chair and watched my phone, my work done. I had laid all the dominoes. Now, all I had to do was wait for them to fall. 3:30 p.m. Chloe texts, OMG. Your dad just got an email. He's standing in the corner with your mom and Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. They look. I don't know how to describe it. Like they've seen a ghost. I could picture it perfectly. The confused frowns turning to shock, then to stone-cold fury. 3:45 p.m. Chloe texts, they're walking over to Mark. Right now. In the middle of the reception hall. Everyone is watching. My breath hitched. 3:47 p.m. Chloe texts, Maya. All hell has broken loose. The story came in a frantic flood of texts. My father, a man who is usually calm and jovial, had walked up to Mark, phone in hand, and in a low, dangerous voice that carried across the silent room, said, "We need to talk. Now." He led Mark into a private study off the main hall, my mom and the lawyer following. Lena, confused and scared, followed them. Chloe pressed her ear to the door. She said she could hear my father's voice, rising in volume. Bankrupt. You're telling me my daughter is marrying into a bankrupt family? You lied to us. You lied about everything. Then, my mom's voice, laced with ice. And you dared to push our Maya out. You isolated our daughter and fed her lies to cover your own tracks. Mark, for the first time, was speechless. He sputtered. He denied. But the proof was right there, on my father's phone. Lena, standing in the doorway, heard everything. The lies about his money. The truth about his deceit. The reason he had been so desperate to get me, the one person who saw through him, out of the way. Her perfect fairy tale shattered into a million pieces right there on the Persian rug of the bridal suite. Chloe said Lena just crumpled. She let out a sound of such profound heartbreak that it silenced everyone. She looked at Mark, this man she loved, this man she had chosen over her own sister, and saw him for what he was, a stranger. A liar. A parasite. She whispered one word, "Get out." The wedding was over. Guests were ushered out in a state of confused shock. The Leaning Tower of Cake sat there, a monument to the spectacular collapse of it all. Mark was escorted off the property, not by security, but by my 2 uncles, their faces grim. He left without a word, his fantasy life evaporating before his very eyes. I sat in my quiet apartment, the chaos unfolding miles away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I just felt quiet. And deeply, deeply sad for my sister. My plan had worked. I had saved her. But I had also broken her heart. And I had no idea what would come next. The silence that followed the disastrous wedding was heavy and suffocating. For 3 days, I heard nothing. I knew my parents were dealing with the fallout, managing the emotional wreckage and the financial mess of a wedding that never happened. I gave them their space. I knew Lena needed time. I spent those days in my bakery, not baking, but cleaning. I scrubbed every surface, organized every sprinkle, polished every pan. It was mindless work, a way to keep my hands busy while my mind spun. On the fourth day, late in the afternoon, the little bell above my shop door tinkled. I looked up from the counter I was wiping down, and there she was. Lena. She looked like a ghost of herself. Her hair was messy, she wasn't wearing any makeup, and she was swimming in one of our dad's old, grey sweatshirts. Her eyes, when they met mine, were hollowed out, filled with a bottomless ocean of pain, humiliation, and regret. We just stood there for a full minute, the air thick with everything left unsaid. Finally, she took a shaky step forward. Maya, she whispered, and her voice broke on my name. And that's all it took. The anger, the resentment, the feeling of vindication I thought I had, it all dissolved. This was my sister. My big sister, who used to read me bedtime stories and braid my hair and protect me from playground bullies. And she was broken. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she choked out, the words tangled in sobs. I'm so sorry. You were right. You were right about everything, and I didn't listen. I chose him. I believed him over you. How could I believe him over you? She collapsed into one of the little cafe chairs by the window, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. I walked over and knelt in front of her. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't list out all the ways she had hurt me. There would be time for that later. Right now, she didn't need a lecture. She just needed her sister. I put my hand on her back and just let her cry. She talked for nearly an hour, the whole story pouring out of her. How charming he was. How he made her feel like the most special person in the world. How his little lies seemed so reasonable at the time, and how my warnings just sounded like jealousy. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale so badly, she cried. I didn't want to see the red flags. And you were the biggest red flag of all, because you were the only one not falling for it. Getting rid of you meant I could keep pretending. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. When her tears finally subsided, she looked at me, her eyes raw. How can you even look at me? I threw you away. I threw away your love, your gift, the cake. Her voice trailed off as she remembered the other disaster of that day. I stood up and gave her a small, sad smile. Stay here. I walked into the back, into my large, walk-in refrigerator. And I came back out holding a white cardboard box. I placed it on the table in front of her. She looked at it, confused. When her tears finally subsided, she looked at me, her eyes raw. How can you even look at me? I threw you away. I threw away your love, your gift, the cake. Her voice trailed off as she remembered the other disaster of that day. I stood up and gave her a small, sad smile. Stay here. I walked into the back, into my large, walk-in refrigerator. And I came back out holding a white cardboard box. I placed it on the table in front of her. She looked at it, confused. I know this isn't what you planned, I said softly. And I know a four-tiered masterpiece isn't really what the occasion calls for anymore. I lifted the lid. Inside was a small, simple, but perfect-looking cake. It was her favorite flavor, lemon with raspberry cream. It was decorated not with elaborate sugar flowers, but with a simple, elegant cascade of fresh berries and a dusting of powdered sugar. It was beautiful. Lena stared at it, her lip trembling. When did you make this? I made it the morning of the wedding, I told her, my own voice getting a little thick. I knew you were going to need it. I didn't know how or why, but I knew that no matter what happened, my sister might need a cake at the end of the day. So I made you one. That was what happened next. That was the shocking part. Not the revenge, not the downfall, not the exposed lies. The shock was that even after everything, even after she had cast me out and broken my heart, I had never stopped being her sister. I had never stopped loving her. And in her darkest moment, I was the one who had thought to bake her a cake. She reached out and her fingers brushed the side of the box. You saved me, Maya. No, I said, shaking my head as I sat down across from her. We saved each other. We didn't call off a wedding that day, we began to rebuild a sisterhood. It wasn't easy. There were more tears, more hard conversations. It took time for the trust to grow back, leaf by fragile leaf. But that little lemon cake was the foundation. We ate it right there in my shop, with 2 forks and no plates, as the sun went down. And for the first time in a very, very long time, it didn't feel like I was the moon and she was the sun. We were just 2 stars, sitting together in the quiet twilight, finding our way back to our own shared sky.